Try spending the night thinking of the many things you can sink. Think of the canoe that would sink. Think about the stuff in your kitchen sink and the hearts that sink at your stench. Oh, but 1,000 things sunk, nothing compared to carbon sink, the stuff that dulls to sleep. Tourists hammer the skies in industrial layouts, automobiles, 1,000 other polluters, load the skies with choking gas. Some smart guys dream of do-nothing solutions, reap billions, and con a captured world while the skies get burnt. Pollute in the city, sink in the village. Capture the carbons while the trees grow. How long before the trees die and rot? Capture the carbon in tombs beneath the seas. In million years, will the tombs hold? Oh, but 1,000 things sunk. You are sunk if you bet on carbon sink.
In my early childhood, Nigeria was engaged in a civil war, the Biafran Nigerian Civil War. And that exposed me to the horrors of what man can do to another man. As a child, I saw a lot of destruction. I learned to play games, not the ones that children play now, would normally play, but playing with things abandoned by the military in the bush, around our homes. And I saw generally a lot of human suffering. And even at that age, it was clear to me that this was not anything that was inevitable. These were created by human beings, and human beings could avoid them also. And then while I was in the university, I became very conscious of the political struggles around Africa. This was a time when the struggle against apartheid in South Africa was very strong. The struggle for independence in Mozambique, in Angola, in now Zimbabwe. All these struggles were going on everywhere, and we're all very engaged in the analysis, the colonial and neo-colonial analysis of the situation of things in Africa and what was the direction for the continent. And then at the same time, although Nigeria was very engaged in standing against the apartheid regime, nationalizing corporations that supported the regime, supported apartheid and things like that, we got to realize that the Nigerian state was very good at campaigning for freedom elsewhere, but there was no freedom at home. And so in the late 1980s and early 1990s, especially late 1980s, I became very involved in the human rights community in Nigeria. And then we were also in the pro-democracy movement in Nigeria, campaigning against military rule and asking the military to hand over to civilian politicians. Along the line also, especially in 1990, this is where I would say I crossed the line from just being a human rights activist to becoming more involved in environmental justice campaigning. That was the year in which a community called Umueche was visited with armed assault by the security system in Nigeria when the community people simply requested for dialogue with Shell. They wanted to have a conversation with the oil company that had polluted their community, polluted their environment. Rather than go into that discussion, the military police was invited in, and they went there in the night, unleashed mayhem on the community, destroying homes, killing people, arresting people. And it was at that time also that the struggle of the Ogoni people, the peaceful resistance of the Ogoni people got almost to its peak. It was building up in 1990, and that's the year in which the Ogoni people produced their Ogoni Bill of Rights. And among the things they demanded were the kind of things we talk about when we talk about environmental justice and the right to self-determination and the right to live in dignity, to have the basics of life, the right to secure the liberties in which people could could justifiably have a good life. And by that time, I was seriously involved in writing and activism among the writers. And Kansainvälisen Maan ended his tenure as president of the Nigerian Association of Nigerian Authors in 1993. And that year, I became the general secretary of the same association. So we had some intersections in terms of discussing literature, discussing writing, discussing human rights, discussing environmental justice. He was Nigeria's foremost environmental justice campaigner, campaigning for ethnic minority rights, campaigning for environmental rights, campaigning for political rights. He was a complete activist, and he was using all tools available at his disposal. And then, so I teamed up with some colleagues to set up the Environmental Rights Action, which is the foremost Nigerian group campaigning for environmental justice in 1993. And this became Friends of the Earth Nigeria, or joined the Friends of the Earth Federation in 1996, 3 years after formation. And of course, it's been very engaged in campaigns both in Nigeria and also in building resistance to activities, especially with regard to extractive sector across the continent, and also in solidarity with people elsewhere outside of the continent. Because in my experience, I work a lot on the activities of oil corporations, oil companies. Have paid attention to the struggles to limit their expansion, and also the struggle by communities to be able to breathe fresh air, to have some kind of liberty. And two very pointed examples are the struggles in Ecuador and the struggles in Nigeria. Now, apart from the fact that there are resistances in these two places, the level of pollution in the Ecuadorian Sucumbio, in the Amazonian part of Ecuador, is almost as horrible as what you will find in the Niger Delta if you should visit either locations today. So, but if you can visit the two, then of course you're going to pump adrenaline in your blood, and you really know that you've seen something in your lifetime. If you want to go on a pollution tour, please don't hesitate to go to Ecuador or come to the Niger Delta. These are some of the most polluted places in the whole world. Now, in 1993, the Ogoni people, which is a small ethnic nationality in the Niger Delta, by this time they numbered 500,000 people. They were very marginalized in terms of politics, economic development, everything, social exclusion in the context of Nigeria. They suffered all these deprivations, but they had a courageous leader in the person of Kansainvälisen, who was murdered eventually in 1995 by the state 25 years ago. And this year we're having a series of activities to mark his execution by the Nigerian state. And I'm happy to say that what he achieved with the Ogoni people in 1993 has not been overturned. In 1993, the Ogoni people declared Shell persona non grata. They expelled Shell from their territory. And Shell struggled, kicked, screamed, got the military, a special military task force to invade Ogoni land. Many were killed, some were sent into exile. And indeed, a lot of Ogoni people are still living in exile out of the repression of 1993, 1994, and that period. Some of them are unable to go back home because of the horrors. But they did that and they succeeded. The lesson from this is that if a people are determined, they can confront the worst transnational corporation, they can confront the worst autocratic government. Because Nigeria was under military rule then, but they could not overturn the will of the people and the solidarity of the international community. Well, when you talk about people that inspired, there were also people that were very repulsive, African leaders that were very repulsive because they were corrupt and sit tight. And some of those ones I wrote about in my poetry and political analysis, because in those early days I was a regular columnist in some major Nigerian newspapers, as well as being a political cartoonist. So I was making commentaries on all these issues. But the key leaders that really inspired me were African, as well as non-African. And I could name them, there are not so many. But people like Patrice Lumumba, that was the immediate post-colonial leader of the Congo, who was killed by the Belgians and also their political accomplices in Congo. And then a man like Amilcar Cabral, who laid the foundations for a free Guinea-Bissau, whose experimentation and activism were short-lived. And in fact, another man that is in the same mold is Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. Both men were more or less killed by their friends who sabotaged the efforts of building these nations by inspiring other Africans to do the same in their countries. In fact, when Amilcar Cabral was shot by his friends, his last words, as recorded, was that, as recorded for by those who were there, was that, say, hey, comrades, this is not a way to resolve an argument. So he knew that these were comrades and they shot him. And then, of course, in the case of Thomas Sankara, we know that some of his right-hand men, a man like the one that took over for him as became the president of Burkina Faso for many years, they were close allies until they decided to betray him and betray the continent. Because these were shining lights that inspired the youths, that challenged the system, that showed that you don't have to kowtow or bow to any external power before you can build up your nation. So these were very key people. The other persons that inspired me, of course, Nelson Mandela inspired everybody, and we really learned directly from him, even while he was in prison. And when he came out, even better, because of some of the pronouncements, some of the writings that he made, some of the things the methods he used was very inspiring for us in terms of making decisions of when to cross one line to another and when to stay in a certain course. So we learned many things from that. And then, of course, I was personally very inspired by Malcolm X in the United States and the civil rights movement in that country. And Malcolm X, one of the things I learned from him, and I still learn by reading whatever comes up about his life, is that he was very pragmatic. And, of course, he was willing to change his positions when situations demanded, when there were new facts. He was a man who dealt with his analysis of the situation. And I learned early that an activist must be able to analyze his situation, the context, and that is not every time. I mean, I don't prejudge anybody. I don't begrudge anybody whatever method they choose for the activism, but there must be knowledge. Everything must be based on knowledge. You can't ignore knowledge. When people ask Malcolm X, where did you train? Which was your school? What is your alma mater? He said, my alma mater is our books. Because most of the books he read in the library in prison while he was detained in prison. So knowledge became for me key tool for activism. And we like to encourage young people coming up into the field to look, you don't just jump into any argument, get your facts. Get to know what is really behind what is going on. Because as Ken Saro-Wiwa echoed the long-standing maxim, you can kill the messenger, but you can't kill the message. So this is the way to be sure that the struggle stays alive until victory.
New moments. Each new moment, a chance for a new movement. Each new minute, another opportunity to undo impunity. Seconds give a second chance to undo obscenities of the stinking rich swimming in the sweat of toiling ponds. Each new moment is a chance for new movement to undo historic wrongs, to build future memories in futurescapes founded on village-scapes of justice, dignity, peace. To undo obscenities of the stinking rich swimming in the sweat of toiling ponds. Each new moment, a chance for new movement. In the cold shadows of simmering towers, to march heads on the ground and build by each thoughtful bound, living ways right way up. One of the things that has made
the plunder of Africa, the destructive extraction in Africa to go on for so long is because of the narrative and the mental conception of our political leaders who believe that whatever nature gives to us must be exploited, transformed, and exchanged for money, especially foreign exchange. And when countries are indebted in Africa, mostly indebted through the structural adjustment programs of the World Bank and the IMF that kicked in the 1980s and early 1990s, the social fabric was disrupted. Economic support systems destroyed, agriculture destroyed. Countries became heavily indebted because they had to depend on imports and would not support local industry, would not support local agriculture. And the more they depended on export, the more indebted the country got. So it was like digging a hole, trying to get out of a hole, and you are digging deeper into the hole. You don't get out of a hole by digging deeper into it. But that was the situation. And so the more indebted a country gets, the more it's open to relax laws protecting the environment, relax laws protecting human rights, and inviting more voracious corporations to come in and extract more and more resources. Even when the value of the commodities go down, if that makes it even worse, you have to extract much more to make up for the shortfall in terms of income. And so all this creates more and more problems. So some of us have been thinking that we need to think more about what a resource really is. The thing we call natural resource, must it be thought of in terms of economy, or should it be thought about in terms of life, in terms of what nature has given to us? Should it be a sense of, should we be like exploiters or like stewards? Should we consider ourselves part of nature or masters over nature? And we've been thinking about resource democracy with a hyphen, which basically talks about reconnecting to the source, thinking about nature as the giver and the owner, think of ourselves as part of that total package of what nature is, and making sure that what we do does not disrupt the ability of nature to replicate and reproduce her natural cycles. A number of books have been very important to me in this struggle. Some I read early in life as a young person, as a growing activist, and some I've read in recent times, even though they were written a long time ago. For example, The African Dream by Ernesto Che Guevara. The African Dream is his diary. His war diary when he was, as an internationalist, fighting in the Congo in the 60s. And helping to organize the resistance against the colonialists in the 60s. His analysis of the comrades he was working with, analysis of the upcoming politicians in the Congo, the analysis of how to organize the troops, the people, the comrades who were fighting with him, how to regroup after a loss, how to prepare for the attack. I mean, it's like a war diary, but to me, it's like a training manual for activists. It can be used for non-resistant movement, showing the critical need for deep organization in anything that we do, that we don't take anything for granted. You have to assess the strength of the enemy, of your opponent, so that you know how to attack. So you have to also learn the arguments of the opponents, so that you can learn how to debunk those arguments, how to build a new narrative on the ashes of the destructive narrative that sedates and makes people sleep and forget what is really killing them. But besides this, there's some very fundamental works. And interestingly, they were written by people of African descent. A man like Walter Rodney, who worked a lot in East Africa, in Tanzania and other places, who's from Guyana originally. He wrote the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And to me, it's a required reading for every activist who's interested in social and economic political justice in Africa, including environmental justice in Africa. Because you need to get to know exactly the underpinnings of colonial power, colonial strategies, which is the same in the post-colonial system, because we got the flag independence, but the people in power, most of the people in power are just agents of the same system that colonized the continent. And then Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. It's a very fundamental book too that helps us to get a clear understanding of the whole system and what could make a free man, what could make a man that is in chains think that is free. And that's the worst kind of slavery, when you think you are free, whereas you are not free. What other book would I mention? There's a book by a Nigerian, very great book by a Nigerian called Chinwezu. The book is called The West and the Rest of Us. It's to me like a combination of the West, how the writings of Walter Rodney and the writers of Frantz Fanon, but this was original analysis, a clear original thinker who has produced that very important book that really sets out a lot of things. So that there are many books. There are some that are works of fiction, but these ones are social analysis that were very fundamental to the way we fashion the work that we do. What is the role of culture in the struggle? Culture is life, and the whole essence of activism is to ensure that life goes on. And everything we do, whether we're designing posters, we're singing songs, we're having the dance or poetry, all these are elements of expression, of anger, of satisfaction, of rejection of systems. All this captures the way we read what is going around us, and the way we kind of capture or formulate what we're going to do next to resist what is going on. So culture is such a powerful tool, and anyone who ignores the cultural tools in resistance would have very sterile resistance, because actually, to succeed as an activist, you have to be able to enter the hearts of people. If you are not able to enter the hearts of people, if you are not able to touch the emotions of people, you're not going to touch their brain. People could get a lot of facts in their brain and just say, okay, that's what is going on, we can do this and that, and they're going to forget about it. But where people are touched, where the heart is involved, not just the head, not just the analysis, then when the two combine, it can be very explosive. Explosive in the positive sense, in the sense that people would not receive information, but when they have the information and they feel the pain and they know that they are part of what is going on, either on the side of the oppressor or that they must be on the side of those who are resisting, then they want to do something. And that is what culture does. Culture is life, is totality. This is why we, as environmental activists, we don't just look at the environment as an object. The environment is totality, it's politics, it's culture, it's life. We don't look at food as just something you put in your mouth. Food is life, food is culture, food is a conversation. Food could even be spiritual. When we put food on the plate, the color is important, not just the taste. And this is what is being exploited by those who are selling fast food and junk food now. They make the color so attractive. People are buying the colors of the rooms or the lights, the different colors of light. People are not buying food. They're eating junk. They don't mind because the color is nice, the music in the background is nice. And so what goes to the mouth, nobody looks at it. They put the flavors and the taste and the things, and people are just being carried away. But we could use this in a positive way. People want to defend, if you want to eat food of different colors, different flavors, we don't want to eat the same thing every time. And we don't want our food to be manufactured in the laboratory. We want food that is grown in a healthy way. Food that is grown, that is in context, that is in season. Food that you don't have to, I don't know how to put this, but it got to be food that is relevant and culturally acceptable, appropriate food. I think it's the human spirit in all of us. We just know that evil thrives only when good men remain silent. And one of the early things I learned again from because I've engaged in a lot of exchange visits, getting communities from one place to the other, just for people to share experience and see that the challenges they are confronting are more or less universal. In the late 1990s, we had some community people from Colombia in Latin America, from Ecuador, from communities in Africa, in Chad, Cameroon, Ghana, other coming to visit the Niger Delta so they could see the challenges, they could see the dreams, the hopes, and how these have been shattered. And we got to one community one night. It was really pitch. When it's night in Nigeria, it's really night. You know, there's no electricity, and we're going to cross a river to get to another village. And we had to use a lantern, you know, with paraffin lamp in a canoe. People were pulling the paddles. And we all, activists from various continents, entered the canoe, and then we got to the other side. And when we got there, a friend from Chad said, after seeing all the pollutions and all the deprivations, and this is where all the oil is being extracted, and there was nothing to show for it except degradation, he said, if I were to be from Niger Delta, I would have been a revolutionary. That's what he said. And then the man from, an elderly man who came from Colombia and who were activists from Colombia, Latin America, said, you don't have to be from the Niger Delta to be a revolutionary. In every society, the objective condition, if we are observant, requires that we be revolutionaries. That was the answer he gave, and everybody said, this is true. And I believe inside of me that when we look at our objective conditions, we just can't give up the struggle. And Bob Marley said, don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight. You know, he kept repeating that. So important. It rings in that memory. Don't give up the fight. Stand up for what is right. Stand up for your right. We can't give up. If we give up, who is going to stand up for the right? You see, when everybody's on the ground that we're going to be fighting for the right? No. The human spirit, we don't give up. We are hopeful that no matter how dark the night is, a dawn must come. We are hopeful that even if 1 million people are following the wrong path, a few people following the right path will eventually prevail, because you can do nothing about the truth. Falsehood may prevail for a long time, or one day truth will prevail. And that moment can happen at any time. And so we never give up. We're hopeful. We want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we want to see that solution happen in our lifetime.
We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. The other day, we danced in the street. Joy in our hearts, we thought we were free. 3 young folks fell to our right. Countless more fell to our left. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. Heart jumping into our mouths, floating on emotion-dry wells. We leapt in fury, but it wasn't funny. Then we beheld bright red pools. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. First the ogonits, then the jaws. Who will be killed this next day? We see open mouths, but we don't hear screams. When we are scarred, tears don't flow. We stand in pools up to our knees. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. Dried tear bags, polluted streams. Things are real when found in dreams. We see their shields behind military shields. Evil, horrible, ring-skull rigs, serial souls. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. The heavens are open above our heads. Toasted dreams in a scrambled sky. 1 million black holes in a burnt-out sky. Their pipes may burst, but our dreams will not burst. We thought it was oil. We thought it was oil. They may kill all, but the blood will speak. They may gain all, but the soil will rise. We may die, but we stay alive. Placed on the slab, slaughtered by the day, we are the living, long sacrificed. We thought it was oil, but it was blood. Thank you.